Hey, I'm Yasir,
My name is Brandon Houston.
Kevin Drain.
and today we're going to be talking about phase diagrams. You have pressure volume, you have pressure temperature, and you also have pressure volume and temperature phase diagrams. And to start off, we're going to be talking about pressure volume. And the first part we'll be talking about is the liquid phase of a pressure volume phase.
And then the liquid phase occurs at high pressure and low volume. And as you begin to change the pressure and the volume, your liquid crosses the bubble curve and enters the liquid vapor region.
Yeah, so what he's saying is basically if you change your pressure and change your volume at certain points, your liquid crosses your bubble curve and begins to form vapors or gas and enters the liquid vapor region.
And at any given pressure, if your volume decreases, it will cross the fusion curve and enter to the solid phase.
And then basically, you can go ahead. Alright, so basically what he's saying is at any pressure, so you say you have a pressure right here, if you decrease your volume, you're gonna end up in the solid region, which is right here.
No matter how the pressure is.
Yeah, so like you said, so if you go all the way up here, if you still decrease your volume, you're still going to end up in the solid region. And also, to get to the solid region, your liquid has to cross the fusion curve, which is basically, fusion of substances. So,
Yeah. And then,
And then at the critical point, which is also the maximum point, you are unable to tell if it is a liquid or a vapor.
yeah, at that point, okay.
You good, Steve?
So, like he just said, at the critical point, you can't tell if the liquid and the vapor is so matched up, you can't really make out what any of it is. So, and since this is a pressure volume phase diagram, the temperature is constant. So if the pressure or volume increases, that's when you reach into the supercritical region, the supercritical fluid region. So, okay, so then I'm going to talk to you about the vapor region. The vapor region is just a region where it's low pressure, high volume. And if that, like you stated earlier with the liquid region, if the volume gets to decreasing, it'll slide, go past the dew curve, and go into the liquid vapor region, and then go into the liquid region.
yeah, and then to get to the liquid region, it's gonna have to cross the bubble curve again. And tie it again to what he said about the supercritical fluid. It's once you reach the critical point, if you increase the pressure or the volume, that's when you begin to enter the supercritical fluid. And then the last part I'll be talking about is, as you noted, Brandon said, this is a pressure volume curve, so the temperature is constant, which means it's an isothermal diagram. So while your pressure and volume is changing, your temperature stays the same. So at given temperatures, your dew curve is going to have a different slope or a different form, and that's what these dashed lines are. So for example, this could be the dew curve for temperature at 300 Kelvin. This one could be the temperature at 335 Kelvin, and so forth. And that is all we have so far for the pressure volume.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to show you guys the pressure temperature phase diagram. So on the pressure temperature phase diagram, you have the solid, which y'all is going to say.
So in your solid region, you have varying pressure and typically low temperatures, and that is proven. For example, if you have water at very low temperatures, it's gonna turn to a solid, which is ice. So that's how you do that. And as you increase your temperature, your solid will go into a liquid.
Okay, so with the liquid phase, it kind of varies depending on what type of substance or what you have or whatever you have. But when any liquid, if you increase the temperature, it goes into the vapor.
And in the vapor, as you see, it occurs at very high temperatures and low pressure. And it also is changing, as you change your pressure and your temperature, it can lead to different phases such as the solid, the liquid, and yep.
Okay, so to get to all of these regions or to go back and forth, they all have saturation lines. So with the vaporization curve, it's basically just taking a liquid into a vapor. That's at this point, it is the liquid is at the most.
At this line.
Well, yeah, at this curve,
Yeah.
you know, the liquid is so saturated where at that point it turned into a vapor.
Or vice versa.
Exactly.
So, for example, if you have water and you're boiling it, it would be on this curve that your water would begin to turn into a vapor.
Because of the increasing temperature and the pressure in the water.
So,
And then you can go back and forth in between these curves. So if you were to go to a vapor to a liquid, it would be your condensation curve. So, but if you're in your liquid phase and you want to go to your solid phase, you would cross the fusion curve or the fusion line, which is where your molecules begin to fuse together to form crystals. And then if you wanted to go from solid to liquid, that would be your melting curve. And then you can explain
the sublimation curve. At the sublimation curve is basically, so let's say you have an ice cube and then you open your hand and automatically turn into steam. That will basically be your solid going into the vapor. So that is why it's sublimation curve.
like
So it's quickly increasing your temperature.
kind of like
It can be.
It's like a
'Cause it's vice versa.
liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
It goes from solid to
Liquid.
vapor like that.
Instant.
Yeah. So, and then it would have to cross this sublimation curve in order to go back and forth. And like Brandon said, each curve is basically the saturation line of which you have so much of one phase that it can't hold anymore at any said pressure and temperature, and it just bounces to the phase that it wants to go to.
Okay, so on our graph, you see we have highlighted the triple point. The triple point is basically where all three, the solid, liquid, and the vapor, all exist in one spot. And then you have the critical point.
Or to go back to here, the triple point is typically at a certain pressure and temperature, whereas these curves, you can have different temperatures and pressures on here to get to a certain point. But for the triple point, with it's going to be different with every substance, but it's going to be at a certain specific pressure and specific temperature. And like Brandon said, it's where all three of your phases are in a mixture and you can't truly tell the difference. It's kind of like the critical point in the pressure volume phase diagram. And then we also have a critical point here.
And the critical fluid region, just as we had on the other pressure volume diagram, is the same thing.
It's the maximum height, right?
Yes. We'll see on the pressure volume diagram, it has a curve. On here, it does not necessarily on top of a curve.
Yeah.
It's just sitting at the top of
For the pressure temperature, it's wherever you have your maximum temperature.
Your maximum pressure?
Yeah, basically your maximum pressure and maximum temperature that your substance can handle. So once it has passed this point where it just can't handle anymore, like it can't handle any more pressure and it can't increase the temperature anymore. It just continues to rise, and then it enters the critical fluid region, which is where it's not fluid. It's a fluid, but it's not liquid, solid, or
kind of unrecognizable. You can't really You can't tell distinctively whether it's a liquid or a vapor.
yeah. So, and
That is all.
Pressure and temperature.